Okay, so I don't know if this mic works. I guess it does. Well, welcome everyone to the first Science Cafe of 2018. It's really a great pleasure and honor to have as first speaker of this year, Professor Eva-Mari Aro. She is an academician, an academy professor in the University of Turku in the Department of Biochemistry, and her main research is on biochemistry. And personally, I met her the first time when I was a young researcher here in the University of Turku, in the Turku Collegium of Science and Medicine. And I have to say, probably she doesn't know, but she has been really a role model for me because she's one of the most successful examples of women scientists in our university. So it's really a great pleasure to have her here in the Science Cafe. And before passing her the microphone and giving her a word, I just remind those of you who have been here who are here for the first time that usually in the Science Cafe we have talks for about half an hour or 40 minutes, and you can interrupt anytime if there is something that you don't understand. There is some words maybe that is technical. After that, we will have a question and answer session. And once again, there are no stupid questions. You can really feel free to answer ask anything. And then Eva-Mari will stay with us a little bit longer. So if you want to just ask her questions personally, for example, in Finnish, or questions that you didn't want to ask during the question and answer sessions, she's here and she will be staying with us a little bit longer. As you know, it's 5 to 7 is the usual time of Science Cafe. Okay, so we are ready to begin. Thank you, Eva-Mari.
Thank you, Sabrina. So this is the first time for me to be in the Science Cafe, and let's see how it goes. So my field is photosynthesis, and I started with nothing. And like an ecophysiologist, I collected samples, mosses from the nature, and tried to measure something, and nothing really worked, and I was very depressed, and everything went badly. And then little by little, years and decades went, and I have learned something, and it has been a long journey, and also the exciting one. So thinking of photosynthesis, I think you all know that photosynthesis is it is a mechanism that supports our life. If there wouldn't be photosynthesis as it is today, how it is functioning today, there would be no life as we experience it now. The life would be completely different, maybe some microbial things, but not our type of people, not the ones who breathe oxygen and need it for life. So I go through some of this. And my field is natural photosynthesis, but I think that I gave something about artificial photosynthesis in the abstract, so I have mixed in the slides, and I made jump from things to things, but okay. So here, in this picture, photosynthesis, and there is actually I'm the biologist, and I should know all the plants, but I don't know which plant, but it's some crop plant. And they are doing photosynthesis, and with photosynthesis they produce all the grains and what we need. And in photosynthesis we have, here is the energy level here, and we have CO2 and water and sunlight. And using only these elements, plants can produce sugar, so high energy compounds. Those compounds we need for our life. And then if we think of artificial photosynthesis, because now everybody knows the climate change, all the problems we have when using the fossil fuels and so on. So we have to find new solutions how to produce the energy what we need to run the societies. And one possibility is to develop artificial photosynthesis. So to mimic the process what the plants do, and they support all our life. we get all our energy from there. And also the fossil fuels are coming from photosynthesis. They come from ancient photosynthesis. So how could we learn to mimic photosynthesis such that we could make machines which would function like photosynthesis and produce energy for us? So also use water, sunlight, and produce chemicals, fuels, all kind of energy-rich compounds what we need to run the society. So I come to some of these points when I'm talking. So simply, thinking in the very simple way, so artificial photosynthesis pathway here from sunlight to the fuels. Because if we think of now what we need to run the society, so we think that sun is the most important, and we have PV technology going very well, and we get electricity. But everybody knows that electricity can't be stored. So we have to store the energy which we get from sun, and it needs some other systems. And what scientists are now doing, they try to mimic the system how plants make photosynthesis, and then make artificial photosynthesis, print them on films, and then make them to produce fuels to run the society and take care of transportation. So electricity is not enough because the society needs fuels. So airplanes can't fly with electricity. Trucks and small cars are coming to run with electricity, but the batteries are not developed. And there is a general thought that batteries can never really develop to run the okay, you can't say ever that never, but anyway, so we need still fuels. And this is now also European Union has made the roadmap how we could go from natural photosynthesis to artificial photosynthesis to get devices to convert solar energy to fuels which are needed for transport. When we think about artificial photosynthesis, in this EU roadmap, for example, these devices can be completely fully man-made. So there is nothing biological there. They are like you print something and you have your atoms and molecules there which are completely man-made. Chemists design those and make them. And then these, we call them solar fuels or synthetic fuels. Then we can think of hybrid systems, which means that we take part, we make it devices, completely man-made devices, and part we take from biological systems, so we combine them. And third possibility is to use biological systems, so we call them biosolar fuels, which we try to produce. And also our department is involved in this biological side. We are just now making a big EU proposal where we will combine all these different levels of producing fuels and try to get best possible out from that. So this is what I usually use when I introduce or present what we are doing in our laboratories. So all plants, whatever we have, and Cyanobacteria, which are prokaryotic organisms, so they are the microscopic small, you know, Cyanobacteria because they make these blooms and might be toxic, but it is just some Cyanobacteria do it, but there are many useful Cyanobacteria as well, and we can build these Cyanobacteria to become the living cells so that they can produce fuels for us. But all these make photosynthesis. They need only water. There is a lot of water still. There is a lot of CO2 nowadays. There is too much CO2 and solar energy. Almost nothing else is needed. And then we have these biological organisms from Cyanobacteria to the biggest trees. And these can use solar energy. They make reducing equivalents and high energy compounds so that they can take from atmosphere CO2, and they have marvelous these nano motors in the thylakoid membrane. They are very small, there are many of them, and with these they can then produce all food and feed what we need. So everything what we eat comes by photosynthesis and what we give to our animals. They also produce fuels, renewable fuels and chemicals. They can be produced via biomass. Everybody knows that in Finland, for example, we use now a lot of wood to make biofuels. But it's not so good way to use biomass. We should go one step further and aim at making direct solar fuels so that we do not produce lots of biomass and then we start extracting lipids and all these things from biomass and use that as a fuel. We have to find a more direct way so that we don't lose so much energy on the way. Here I have shown fossil fuels and chemicals, and it's in the black box because they are bad things nowadays. But all these fossil fuels are produced by photosynthesis. It was the photosynthesis, oxygenic photosynthesis, which evolved 2 to 3 billion years ago, milliard years ago. And since then, photosynthetic products have been sedimented in the bottom of the seas or as coal. And now we have been pumped them for 100 years. And we have released all that CO2, which has been fixed by photosynthesis, stored for billions of years in the bottoms of the sea and or as a coal. And now we are burning them, all CO2 comes to the air. And this is our problem, because CO2 is now changing our weather and being very threatening for us. So this was done early, and we should not use these anymore. We should not release CO2 from fossil photosynthetic products to the atmosphere. So now I go 2 to 3 billion years ago, and it was the Big Bang in evolution. And at that time in the globe, there were only prokaryotic organisms which could not make photosynthesis. They could do some photosynthesis, anaerobic photosynthesis, and they used some very rare substrates for their photosynthesis and so on. But here, about 2 to 3 milliard years ago, there was a Big Bang, and there was a prokaryotic organism. It's not this one because this is a Cyanobacterium what is drawn here, but it was the organism, and in this organism there evolved the oxygen evolving photosynthesis. And this means that those organisms can use only sunlight, CO2 from air, and it was plenty of CO2 at that time because the CO2 concentration was high, and water. And they can produce everything what we need. They filled all the oceans, and there were huge amounts of cyanobacteria all over. And at that time they produced all the oxygen to the atmosphere. And we are now living in that atmosphere those cyanobacteria has produced. And this oxygen is all coming from this cyanobacterial oxygenic photosynthesis. It means that they get their electrons from water. They split water. And if you think about how do you split water? So because water has energy, but you know that when you split, if you want to split water, you use electricity. You know when you are in the bath and everybody says don't take your hair dry or anything there because there will be the problems. So cyanobacteria learned to split water, and all plants, everything since then who use this oxygenic photosynthesis, they can split water. And this was the beginning of the evolution of life, what we are experiencing now here globally. Okay, now we have lots of oxygen. It took a long time before the oxygen content in the air reached the level what we have now. And I have here the picture of Cyanobacterium. This is those prokaryotic organisms, one of the descendants, and they are single cell organisms. They do not have different compartments, but you see here these membranes. They are membranes around here, and in these membranes they have these photosynthetic nanomachines which split water and release oxygen, and it happens all the time. But there is no kind of accumulation of oxygen in the atmosphere, because plants are always releasing it because they split water, but we are using it, so there is a very good balance of oxygen. I put here, this is our favorite, we use this is Synecocystis Cyanobacterium, and we use what happens in these membranes here. How do they take solar energy and convert it to chemical energy which supports our life? This is just another Cyanobacterium. They are also prokaryotic. They make these filaments and so on. They fix also nitrogen here. And then on the side here, I have then took hugely long time before eukaryotic plants, algae, mosses, and higher plants developed. And these are eukaryotic. It means that they have cells where there is a nucleus, and there are different organelles. Here is mitochondrium, which is our respiration. We have similar type of cells. Everyone are composed of those. Plants are almost similar as we are. So there is, in cellular level, there is not much difference. But plants are much more versatile. They are much more effective in the respect that they have these green chloroplasts here. And these are the cell organelles of plants where they make photosynthesis. And this photosynthesis then, I have taken here another picture of this real electron microscopy picture of this chloroplast. And you see here inside now again these thylakoid membranes, the membrane structures. These are again the same, do the same thing as here in Cyanobacteria. We have these membranes, but now they are in higher plants and also in algae and mosses. They are in the specific organelle, organized there very nicely and do their job. They convert solar energy to chemical energy. And I took here this picture just to show you that this conversion of solar energy to chemical energy is not so simple, so that it's in different reactions. So here are the membranes again, which are shown here, and these membranes split water, they release oxygen, and electrons go to their excited electrons, and they go and produce these high energy chemical compounds, ATP, NADP, H. And with these high energy compounds, then the cells can fix CO2 from the atmosphere and produce all the food, feed, everything what we need. And these products of photosynthesis are the high energy compounds, and our life is dependent on them completely. Now this is from Esplanade picture. Okay, I zoom. So there is some tree. I'm the biologist, I should know which tree, but anyway, it's a tree. And then zoom, 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 we go to the cell. And now next we go to this thylakoid membrane. You saw those membranes, which were like narrow strings. But now to look what is there in those membranes. And here in the membranes we have these nanomotors. We call them Photosystem Two, which this is the one which can split water, and it releases oxygen. And then we have another one, which we call Photosystem One. And why they are in this order, that there is first Photosystem Two and then comes Photosystem One. It is just historical because this was found first, and after tens of years people realized that although it was found first, it functions and works in this photosynthetic electron transfer chain later than the one which was discovered later. And this is the thylakoid membrane I showed you, and these are the big protein complexes. They are about, I would say, 50 proteins, different proteins here, and they bind pigments, and you always need to have pigments to absorb solar energy, and that is the prerequisite to make use of any light, that you have the pigments which absorb that light and then convert it to chemical energy. And now when we look at these thylakoid membranes, where these photosynthetic light reactions capture solar energy and convert it to chemical energy, so they are almost exactly similar as they were 2 to 3 billion years ago, when first there was this big bang and oxygenic photosynthesis developed. They have not changed, so it was such a marvelous thing what happened at that time, and it has been like that since then. Although a lot of other things around these reactions have changed a lot, there are all different regulatory mechanisms, but the basic systems they evolved once and they did not evolve a second time, and they were kept until now. So I put the lights on now. So this system here is the Photosystem Two. It absorbs solar energy. And with this solar energy, it can split water molecules. So this is, it's very dangerous, because if you put electricity or something, it functions in very high oxidizing potentials. And from these water molecules there, the electrons are ejected. And they go to the electron transfer chain. They are excited because they take energy from sunlight. The electrons are excited, and then they go to the electron transfer chain. We have here one complex. They continue from here, and then they go to the second. This is now the Photosystem One. Here they must be excited the second time. They also absorb the light energy, and now they have enough energy so that they can reduce CO2. So CO2 molecules are converted to organic molecules, and in these COH, how it's marked here, now they have energy. They have stored solar energy in these chemical compounds. And then in life, they go further and they produce all different chemicals from these. But this is a basic thing how we produce, how photosynthesis. We don't produce, but photosynthesis. We try to learn and then produce, but photosynthesis now produces chemical energy in this way. And really here, these excited electrons, when they are excited, they absorb light energy, and they are excited, they have more energy. So it's not enough here in Photosystem Two to reduce CO2 and make sugars. They must go through the second excitation in order to store the solar energy to chemical compounds. I took a little bit so that you see that it's quite complicated systems which are functioning. This is the Photosystem One, which can give electrons to CO2 and then produce stored energy. And here, if you look at the structure, and here are the chlorophyll, because always must be pigments so that they can absorb light energy and transfer this light energy to a better form so that we can make use of it. So they are here, these chlorophylls, and then one electron, small electron here absorbs chlorophyll absorbs light, electron is excited and it starts moving to different acceptors here, and finally it goes out from this photosystem 1. Just thinking of artificial photosynthesis, and in some organisms, they have here in the end of photosystem 1 the hydrogenase enzyme. And what they can do, they can take the electron, couple it to the proton, and make hydrogen. And everyone knows that hydrogen is pure energy. So this is one way to make energy with the photosynthesis to produce hydrogen. And you know the hydrogen cars. I was yesterday in the hydrogen car, where I was in Germany, and this guy had been driving the car for 900 kilometers with this hydrogen car. Only problem was that he did not have the tanks to fuel the car, so he has to decide very carefully which route he will take to be able to fill the tank with hydrogen on his way from one country to the other. And now this is the other photosystem. This is the photosystem 2, which is splits water. And this is a unique one because it's very oxidizing reaction what it does. So water molecule is split to oxygen, protons, and electrons. And electrons starts then migrating. They are absorbing and then start migrating from photosystem 2 out to the electron transfer chain. I don't go to details. I had something because this is such a complicated mechanism how photosystem 2 splits water that still it is one of the globally biggest problems. If we can solve this and we could mimic this, we would have no problem to produce energy. But researchers are working hard, they are getting good results, they are progressing, but still there are problems. So science goes very slowly, but it progresses all the time. So here is again same electron transfer chain. I talked about water splitting in photosystem 2, electrons ejected, going to electron transfer chain, excited again. Now they have enough energy to produce these sugars and different high energy chemicals. But because the system functions is in so strange conditions, very dangerous conditions, very oxidizing complex products, very reducing products, it's always destroying itself. It's always what happens there. They are always these structures, nanomotors are inhibited, degraded, and made again to keep the system going on.
I got a question.
Yeah.
If we talk about energy values, the excited electrons, they must come from carbon, nitrogen, oxygen.
No,
they are few electron volts, right?
They are pigments. So the pigment molecules, chlorophyll.
If we talk in electron volts, energy values.
Yeah, don't ask me exact energy values.
Okay. But what about they are first slower and then they are get excited more? What is the energy range? What is needed for the production of
So if we say that, if we look at here in photosystem 2, so water has something, it is 1.2 volts or something. Okay. And then when it absorbs light and the reaction center becomes excited, electron is in the higher level, it is something.
What is the difference?
1 volt. 1 volt. Yeah, it's a huge amount. Yeah.
Okay,
1 volt, okay. Something around.
We are in the range of light.
Yeah. So it destroys itself all the time because it is so dangerous processes. So when we look at the plants, they look so calm and they go a little like this. But then thinking there are about 9 million electron transfer chains in every single plant cell. So there are huge things happening all the time. So I have started appreciating them when I have learned a little bit. So this is again photosystem 2, which splits water. So, and this is what happens there when we put the light on. It is, there is one protein, we call it the suicide protein. It disappeared. It is the D1 reaction center protein which binds this chlorophyll. And it must be made again. There are hundreds of proteins helping all this system to happen. And then this system has to build it again. And every 15 minutes in sunlight, this has to degrade this 32 kilodalton suicide protein and destroy it, make it completely new, put it back to the big complex so that it can function again. And to make it functional again. And this is really, it takes a lot of energy to keep it functioning. And here I put that there are about 9 million electron transfer chains in every single cell. So huge traffic going on when photosynthesis. But think of when summer comes, when spring comes, and it takes a couple of days and we have our leaves are full of green, trees are full of green leaves. And so then all these things are really doing their best. What did I do here? Okay, I just put that we can put hydrogenase in the end of this one light reaction, which has it's more reducing now, and it can donate electrons to protons and make hydrogen. So this kind of vehicles are being done. This is I have almost used my time.
No, this is very interesting. Please go ahead. I want to hear more.
So this is kind of a scheme. So what plants do, and also what researchers try to mimic. So we have here, we can call this the reaction center. I told that we have Photosystem 2 and Photosystem 1. I put here in natural photosynthesis. And also this artificial photosynthesis, people try to mimic this system. So if we have this reaction center, we excite electron, and then its electron is lost, it goes to the electron transfer chain. Here we need an antenna. Antenna means here that we have lots of chlorophylls and pigments which they just absorb light energy. And with resonance they transfer this energy to these reaction centers. And here the electron is ejected, it goes away, and in natural photosynthesis it travels to photosystem 1, and it can it's then energy enough to produce either hydrogen or sugars in natural photosynthesis. But always when we have this ejection of electron and these oxidized reaction centers, they are so dangerous. They take this electron, what they have lost wherever. They take them from amino acids, they just steal it. And there must be a good arrangement that immediately when electron is lost, there is some catalyst which brings the electron back to this reaction center. So that if it's oxidized, it is so dangerous to the environment that it will destroy everything. So there are strong protective systems. But artificial photosynthesis, similarly, it tries to mimic the natural photosynthesis. We need to put there, they need to put there the big light harvesting antenna. So that kind of pigments which absorb light. Do you remember Michael Kretzel? He got the Millennium Prize here in Finland. And he tells that in his these PV panels, when they make electricity, he mimics photosynthesis. And what he means that he has made colored panels so that they have different colors, and when you have different colors, they absorb different wavelengths of light, and that's his mimicking of photosynthesis from here. But a real artificial photosynthesis wants to have two catalysts, one which breaks water, releases oxygen, and electrons then are delivered to the other catalyst, which then reduces either hydrogen or CO2 and makes different molecules where are high energy molecules and can be used as fuels. There are different styles of artificial photosynthesis now has been designed. I think I don't go to details. I have these all. So those were hydrogen production here. this is already, there is a catalyst of water oxidation so that you break water and you have electrons, then they go to the other side of the membrane here, and in the other side now people are already trying to fix CO2. The simplest molecule what you can do now is a formic acid, but there you already have energy stored from the sun in these organic compounds. And this is one scenario, so that here you just put water, sunlight, carbon dioxide, you release oxygen, then you have these different membranes, and here the fuels are dropping down. So this is a little bit still waiting to become the true, but that is where people aim at. Here is, this is from Brookhaven, I think, yeah. So this is natural photosynthesis. I showed you here is Photosystem 2, this is Photosystem 1, this is the complex there in between, and natural photosynthesis breaks water, electrons go excited, then they go downhill, excited again, and then they can produce sugars and so on. And chemistry is working now very hard, chemists, to find out different complexes which could be replacing these natural photosystem 2 and 1. We talk about catalysts. We need catalysts which and earlier times this was ruthenium was used a lot, different ruthenium compounds, but ruthenium would be the one which would then have the absorb light, and there would be the excitation. But of course ruthenium is an expensive noble atom. So you can make research, you can find ways, people have worked hard, but in the end the things what you are going to use in artificial photosynthesis, they must be abundant. You must have them a lot, and they should not be the expensive ones. And this is one of the things what now is people try to find. Then it went to titanium oxide next, and there are different compounds, and chemists are all the time making new compounds what they could use here. And then you have an other side here when you should use the electrons and reduce CO2 from the atmosphere. And again there is hundreds of scientists making good electron acceptors and catalysts there, so research is very, very, very intense. Here is one a little bit step going further. You can here already make a little bit more complicated compounds which have stored energy in organic compounds, and they have graphene and nanotubes and things. And this is how artificial look is. Artificial leaf, we call it artificial leaf, the artificial photosynthesis, so that it would mimic quite a lot what we have in nature. This one is normal and this is artificial. And then there are systems where there is the water splitting is done in here in one chamber, and then this is Daniel Nocera and Pamela Silver in Berkeley. So then we have bugs. This is Rastonia, one bacterium, and this bacterium, it's here in the same chamber. They are these ones. It's an enlargement here. So artificial photosynthesis splits water. It produces hydrogen, and this hydrogen is used as an energy by these bacteria. And then these bacteria in the metabolism produce more complicated organic compounds which are suitable for as fuels and so on. So this is kind of a hybrid, artificial, natural. And it could look something like this in the future, or like this. And this is, again, this is what we also do with the synthesis using completely biological systems and trying to make biological production of chemicals and fuels. This is a strange organism. It's an animal which has chloroplasts in it, and this is, we just took this for our congress which we organized in Leiden.
Is it real, this animal?
It is animal, it exists, yes. Oh. Yeah, real. So yeah, nature does nature does different strange things. So
is it like a nudibranch or? Sea slug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is just that one. Yeah. Okay, so what we are working with is this is Cyanobacterium now, those prokaryotic, and we are working with Synecocystis, one specific species. We are trying to make living factories so that these would produce us what we want them to produce. It's very ambitious. So, but we have to know how these function. We have to know their DNA and their proteins and their metabolism, everything, so that we can start making engineering inside. And then doing this engineering and just using CO2, water and sunlight to produce the chemicals what we want them to produce. I don't go to these our strategies, but we have to know the metabolic pathways. We think how things go over there and design. This is the last slide I saw. So I saw about blue bioeconomy, what we are also doing in the lab. So photosynthesis is again the main thing, and we have microalgae. We select the best possible ones which produce the things what we want, and we grow them in conditions where they best produce the things what we want. So it's also quite complicated, but we try our best. And we aim at an integrated system so that we have these point sources of CO2, and high CO2 is always, it increases the growth of plants and also algae. So we get a lot of biomass. And we can use algae to clean the wastewater. So they are very good in taking out the bad things from water, and we get clean water. We can get fertilizers, they can fix nitrogen. We can get biodiesel because some microalgae are very good in producing different lipids which can be used as a biodiesel, and also even in as jet fuel. And then you can make different conditions or to make them to produce chemicals, pharmaceuticals, which can then be used for health and all different things. So I promise this is the last. This is my last. So now there are many projects also in EU opening, and actually I am also involved in the big projects where we try to make use of photosynthesis to produce more food. And the other project is then the energy project to try to make use of natural photosynthesis and artificial photosynthesis to produce the fuels in the direct way, not going to biomass. And really, I hope you learn to appreciate photosynthesis and plants and cyanobacteria. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wait a second. Could you use the microphone just for the recording? So that, thank you.
Just for curiosity, how easy is it to discuss and do things with the technical people? I mean, those engineers. And stuff, because they have a very different opinion of the nature than biologist or biochemist.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. So this is now, for example, in Tampere University, where they try to put engineering and science together. And this is all the time when we make these applications, we have to take engineering and we have to take biology. And in the end, we never go as far that we could have engineering. So we have to learn. We are still in the learning process to really understand each other. So because it's understanding, our science are so different. So they are good and we appreciate them a lot, but we think in the different way and our problems are different. And to fill this gap in between is, but we have been practicing that almost 20 years now, because we have to make these bioreactors and we need engineers to make those, and it goes slowly.
Yeah, thank you. You say you have been doing this for 20 years, but this engineering and science have been going on for a lot longer. So
yeah. So it's really needed that we could cope and collaborate very well. Yeah, we need it. We all know we need it, but if we don't understand, you know, we talk and I talk about DNA, and for them DNA is nothing, but it is this, and there is a gap in understanding between us. But we try.
Okay, so next question. I do have one, and this is related to what you were saying of trying to mimic somehow the natural processes of photosynthesis for creating these artificial photosynthesis complexes. And the question is, I mean, somehow it's been very fascinating for me to think that this is probably the best way in which these processes work, that is the natural way, the way in which they evolve. But is it really so? I mean, or are there ways that could be, you know, modified to make it better? I mean, it's naturally natural evolution somehow of these processes that you say it happened only once in a way. The best optimal way.
Yeah, no, yeah, because in nature and during evolution, as I said, the reactions are so dangerous, so that they have made so much protective mechanisms around. You see, reactive oxygen species, you know, they are produced all the time, and plants have to eliminate them all the time so that they don't destroy their structures. We know that we make reactive oxygen species in our body and we get cancer and whatsoever. So plants have much more serious situation because they absorb light, and there is singlet oxygen, there are superoxide, all of these. So they have a lot of mechanisms that protect. They only protect. And it takes so much energy. So it is said that plants are inefficient in their photosynthesis. Yeah, they are quite inefficient. How many photons what they absorbed, how much of those photons are then in energy-rich compounds. Not so much because they need so much for protection. But now plants have these self-healing systems. I saw that D1 is degraded and it is made. And now artificial photosynthesis people try to find the ways how they can incorporate these self-healing systems in these artificial systems. So, but we can also get rid of these when we know how we drive the system. So if we drive the system very fast, that we can take electrons out from the system, so there is something where we can put them immediately to the product, to the fuels, then we don't need so much protection systems. And these are what we are also fighting ourselves now, trying to understand what can we take out from there to get more products and this kind of gain.
Yes, question.
You mentioned that the basic reactions, photosynthesis 1 and 2 and the medium phase, have not changed in 2,000 million years.
Billion? Million?
2,000 million
no,
years.
Now,
okay,
you are right. You are right.
That's the same thing. Right.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Now, everything changes in nature, at least slowly. So it's peculiar, isn't it?
It is, because all these regulatory mechanisms have changed. We look at this evolution in regulation. Of course, there are some changes, but the basic reactions are the same. When you go and you zoom to this very close reaction center, you zoom to how water is split. So no difference. Yeah.
There has been no need to change.
No need. It happened, maybe it happened only once.
Another thing I would like to say, ask, you mentioned there somewhere 15 minutes. You mentioned that
in
time period, yes.
Yeah.
And then you, in the beginning, you said that efficiency rate is 237 kilojoules per mole.
Oh, I did not say it. It was in the picture, and I took it from
some.
I don't understand joules. Sorry.
Yes, but what I'm aiming is that. What is actually the production rate? You mentioned that here the electrons can be.
Okay, I tell you. Okay. So when light is harvested, so when sun is shining and plants absorb light, it's femtosecond time scale.
Say it again.
Femtosecond.
Okay.
Is it 10 to minus 15?
Right, yes.
And then there is a short separation. I say that when it comes to reaction center, the electron is excited, and then it leaves to the It's picosecond, 3 picoseconds.
They are very quick.
Very quick, so quick that people have learned how it happens only when the machines and equipment have developed to have a good resolution. Then you go to the electron transfer chain, then you go to microseconds and even milliseconds. It goes down in here when it goes down, then bam again in PS1. 3 picoseconds, it's up there.
It's quick.
Yeah, they are fast.
Interesting is evidently what is the production rate of some compound? At what time you can produce how much that compound or fuel?
Yeah, people know. We were just calculating the crop yields and how, but if I give you some numbers, I might give completely wrong. Okay. So therefore I...
But are they something that is somehow reaching or getting close to the level of the natural one? Or are we very far?
You mean in artificial?
In the artificial, with respect to natural. How far are we from this point of view?
Okay, we are now preparing this FET flagship in EU and thinking of the time scale. So we are now 18. So our plan is that 2050 there will be artificial photosynthesis taking care of the energy. So that there is so much, but we also we have after 10 years we have certain part which we think that should be ready until that time, and it might be more using also the natural system together with the artificial, and there we have lots of electrochemistry also, and combining water splitting by PV, and then using that further. So it's not here yet. Yeah. It takes time.
So they are still not comparable to them.
No.
Yes.
How long do we wait for practical applications?
But they start coming. EU just announced I was also preparing that the big kind of almost Nobel type of prize for artificial photosynthesis. And there will be, after 5 years, the groups are now competing, and after 5 years, first we thought that they go to Sahara, but then it goes to Grenoble or somewhere, no, to Cadaras in Provence, France. So they have to build their systems, and the one who has the best system absorbs most of sunlight and transfer it to chemical energy will be the winner. So now the EU tries to boost a lot so that really people would invest and really try to think how to start get it functioning. And we have no possibilities in that one, so they are for other people. But this is now advertised. It's open call, and groups are preparing to show something in 5 years. But it will be the prototype. It will not save the save our problem, save us from climate change at that stage. But there is a real program how we think that now we are releasing CO2, and how the CO2, we have to start going to negative CO2. We have to start capturing more and more CO2 from the air, and there is no real way how you can capture it, how you can take it. No technical, no. So there was a big in ESAC, European Academies of Science Advisory Council, which advises EU. They made a big survey, and the result is that we can't capture. So plants as such are the best in capturing the CO2 from the air, but we have to stop releasing CO2. And this is, but then researchers have built kind of the scenarios when we should kind of, because when we make artificial photosynthesis, it's also that we have these point sources of CO2, the factories which release CO2. So mapping artificial photosynthesis or natural photosynthesis close to those and use the extra CO2 will help a lot. But we have to plan that we have to go down with CO2, and the new equipment also must be such that they can capture CO2 from lower CO2 level. So there are so many things come together to think about.
What about taking the CO2 from water? The oceans are getting more and more acid,
Yeah.
mainly due to CO2.
Yeah, that is, yeah. But it is, they are the best stores
Yes,
for CO2.
there's plenty of
Yeah,
them,
yeah. And when they are,
They get destroyed.
yeah, that,
I mean, if
yeah,
it's
too
much,
acidic, yeah, yeah. So, and now when there are plans how to use oceans, so they start planning that all different ways to make use of oceans. So that is also it's a dangerous thing, because when you start making use of oceans, you might make big mistakes. It really should be thought carefully what you start doing there, because they are so important stores for CO2 and things.
Yes, can you use one first you and then yes, but use the microphone, which should be somewhere there. Yes.
So you work with photosynthesis, yeah?
And
You worked with biological photosynthesis.
yes,
Is it really, from what I've heard, that some of the plants, most of the plants, when you talk about
do you talk to the microphone? Yeah.
storing,
Doesn't really work as amplifier,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just talk louder. It's only
So-
very important.
sorry. So the plants that, from what I've heard, that there are plants, like most of the plants, that they really don't say work carbon negatively. They're like carbon zero-sum game. So do you work with certain types of plants or algae, or what is like your?
So what we do,
Yeah.
we do almost everything, not everything, but for different evolutionary, so that we want to understand how mechanisms have evolved, because those mechanisms which protect photosynthesis, they are very different. But plants are really, because they are, many algae, Cyanobacteria, they have so-called carbon concentrating systems. They make the mechanism that they pump CO2 all the time inside the cell. Yeah. They have natural systems, so they have quite high CO2. And also C4 plants. The best crops we have, maize, sorghum. So they have a specific carbon pumping system developed in them, and they are good in productivity just because they pump carbon. And you know that, for example, tomato greenhouses, they have CO2 fertilization. In high CO2 they grow much better.
Okay, what about the plant's life? If the plant is like really like a flower, it lives only a moment, or a tree that could live 100 or thousands of years, which is like better in like photosynthesis or combining CO2?
So trees, for example, has very low efficiency. So if we talk about photon conversion efficiency, so in trees we can say that it's 0.2%, very low. But then we have some, and it's just quite amazing that it might be in the desert or somewhere in Sahara or somewhere. There are some plants which they come in spring or the time when it's very good for them. They just come, boom, and they grow, they are so efficient, and then they die. And this is what we try to understand now. I have been trying to understand, because there are people in US who have been studying this, and I try to ask what are the mechanisms. So could we learn something and mimic and put them to our plants or something? So yeah, they are very different, but trees, you see, they grow years and years, and if we think of sunlight, what they have absorbed during their life, so it's very small amount of that sunlight energy which then is stored, and therefore it is so not good to go and burn the wood, because it's very expensive. We have to use the wood for much better and long lasting purposes, furniture, or something much better than burning, because in burning you just release CO2 back to the air.
So forget wooden sauna. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, but that's almost, yes, you see, the big thing is in Africa, for example, when they are cooking, so that is already, it's really the problem. Yeah. So they have their fire and they are cooking, they bring the wood, and then somebody suggested that now we have these small nuclear power stations, so let's bring to every village to the nuclear power station. So and then we don't know where to put the wastes. So
there is no easy solution.
There is no easy solution, yeah.
Okay, there was the first question there, and then
actually, it was very similar to the previous one, but to put it simple, are there some plants that we could, if we start growing them more, we could increase the usage of CO2?
We have the enzyme which takes CO2, we call it Rubisco enzyme. And the problem with this enzyme is that it also takes oxygen. And it competes, depends how much we have CO2 in air and what are the partial pressure of CO2 and O2. And if we have high amount of CO2, this enzyme takes only CO2 and goes to productivity. And in our atmosphere, we have 21% of oxygen, so about 30% of this enzyme is taking oxygen, and then it goes wasting of energy. So they are not, the system in plants is not perfect. And it has been, researchers have tried to improve that a lot and used a lot of time and not very much success.
Regarding the electron transport chains, if my information is correct, it involves the quantum tunneling process. So are you also collaborating with physicists to understand this process?
The quantum coherence.
Quantum tunneling of...
What did you...
Quantum tunneling of electron.
No, don't ask me. We have the expert here.
no, okay. There is, I can say something about it. There are some...
I try to understand. I listen fluently, but if I am asked to explain something, I can't do it. Okay.
I can't, no. I mean, it's. I can just say a few words about this because there is some subfield which is emerging of quantum physics that is known as quantum biology. Where there have been some research showing that there are some complexes that use quantum properties to optimize the process of certain processes which are related to photosynthesis as well. And however, this is not yet, I mean, it is still controversial somehow. It is not very easy to actually really prove that for such complex systems, actually it is quantum coherence that plays a role. So it is an emerging field and there are results, but I would say that definitely it isn't something that we can say it's completely established, okay? And definitely it's only for certain systems, and I don't think, but this is now my personal opinion here. I mean, I don't want to say. I don't think that generally for understanding photosynthesis at the level of what Eva-Mari was talking. So in a very general way, you do need quantum physics. It's not established. So yeah. I think it has to be probably studied and understood, which is the role of quantum coherence. Because even if there is some quantum coherence, it doesn't mean necessarily that it has a connection with the function or functionality of the processes. So it's correct what you said, but it is, I would say, not.
Yeah, but I
not
say
mainstream.
that in the field of photosynthesis, people are very excited about quantum coherence, but we do not. Like me, I don't understand anything, but we are more also physicists in the field, and of course then they are very brilliant when they come and tell us. and that there are very many possibilities. They can tell whatever because we do not understand that, but really there is a lot of discussion.
Yeah. And it's yet another example. It's not maybe the same as biologists and engineers, but even in the case of biologists and quantum physicists, it's not easy really.
No, it's not easy
to communicate and to understand each other. Of course, it's increasingly important, I think, and there are efforts. But I mean, there is a long way to go, let's say, yes. More questions? So I do have actually one that is related to one of your last slides where you were showing this little green thing, the one maybe before, yeah? Before? Yeah, that one. And you were saying that somehow once you completely understand how this little green thing works, you can change it somehow in a way to make it work as you want.
We make synthetic, it's here. So what we do with this thing, we change the metabolism. We make new pathways here. We make them first to take more solar energy, and this solar energy is converted to chemical energy, ATP and ADP, and this is used to make different compounds. So we make the pathways, synthetic pathways here, which should be most efficient in producing what we want them to produce. And then we make the transporters so that they are secreted out from the cell, and kind of we can collect them from, and they might even be volatile so that you take it from the head spaces. It means that there are many things you have to, we call it synthetic biology, to make the living factories.
It basically means that you are modifying somehow some of the external conditions.
Internal.
Internal
we modify the DNA to produce, to do what we want them to do.
I see. Yeah. Okay, so it's at the level of
it's a very bad, we are devils.
Okay, I think they are not.
No.
Sentence, biomass production will be limited.
So what we want here now, and it's that we grow these first. So then you have in the bottles, you have very green, beautiful cyanobacteria. They are green, or they can be algae green cells. And then we put them to biofilms. And when we put them to biofilms, biofilms have such holes and things. They go in those holes and they stop growing. And then at that stage, they become like machines to produce what we have engineered them to produce. So this is the way how we want them to function.
Interesting. More questions? Okay, I have one again related to this one. So how because for me it's quite amazing that you can actually change the DNA of these objects. You know, is this something that is specific to this object?
No. There are methods. There are methods now, but there is legislation, so it's not allowed. But you are allowed to do this in the laboratory, and if you grow it in bioreactors, so you are not allowed to deliver these to the nature.
Yeah,
so it's really strict, and all what we are doing is followed, and we had very strong rules how we work and how everybody in Europe work. So they are kind of, we call them closed systems. And in closed systems, you can nowadays do almost whatever. Cloning monkeys now.
And is there any sort of pressure from, I don't know, industries, companies, or even political point of view when it comes to your research? Because of course it's something that has strong impact on issues that are very important for our society.
Yeah. Of course, they always ask that when do you, every 3 years they ask that when you have the machines ready.
So what is your answer?
So I don't give my answer now because I have the EU roadmaps and I know the general thinking, so I even took the roadmap with me. So it is that maybe this kind of systems are functioning 2035. In practice. And then if you go really to artificial man-made systems, 2050. They are not today and not tomorrow. And then there are interviews, newspapers want to interview, and Aro is doing new fuels and she is going to change the whole thing.
Yeah, this happens, I think, in all disciplines, but even more in this specific instance, I can imagine. because of the strong societal impact. Yes.
Yeah, everything goes so slowly. We work hard, and people around the world work hard, but the task is also hard.
Okay, let's see. There are more questions. So maybe this might be the last one. Yeah, because I will decide to stop, otherwise everybody will start killing me. But what do you think would be, in your field, really the most important result that would lead to complete change, and in the way in which our society and the problems related to that would work? I mean,
so what we think is that it is this. No, okay. So when you learn to know, this is Photosystem 2, which splits water. And here are the reaction center chlorophylls, P680. These are which are collecting all lights which comes from pigments all around, and excitation happens here. And there are 4 turns of excitations, and positive charges are then collected. This is a manganese cluster, 4 manganese ions, and there is calcium. And they give 1 electron at a time, always over there. And when 4 electrons are given from here, 1 molecule of water is split, and oxygen is released. And so this system, if we could mimic this in the test tube, so this would be in the field, but they are specific groups which are really doing this manganese cluster and this research, and have done that tens of years already. And now there are crystal structures we understand more and more and more and more, but still we can't, people who are in this field can't do it in the test tube. So if we can do this in the test tube, when water split, natural photosynthesis splits water, and we could mimic these complicated reactions, this is very simple way here, then it would give possibilities to produce energy, limitless amounts of energy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, very final question, if there is anyone from the audience.
You see, I say one thing. So
yes.
You see, producing energy from water, and there was already in 1800 the book driven by one scientist, now I don't remember the name, and he said that in the future I think water will be the source of energy of the earth. So, and water as such, so, but if you can solve this mechanism, then it would be water and sunlight and water. Yeah.
Okay, so as you know, was this a question? No. Okay, so as it is, yes. Okay, yes, go ahead. Yes.
So, what I think many people thinking here after this is that the motivation for the artificial photosynthesis is quite clear, but it seems a really long way in case of climate change to be a kind of efficient solution, or that we could really make it work before we are, let's say, kind of too far with the problem. But another way, which was asked, that somehow could we somehow like modify or genetically modify plants to make some kind of super plant which had lots of chloroplasts and would raise really rapidly. And is there some kind of major research project in that field? Maybe you mentioned before.
But maybe I gave a wrong impression, because there is a way now how for example, in Europe, the process is how to go from where we are now to artificial photosynthesis. It's linear. We have now PV technology, solar cells. We can use those solar cells to split water, and then we get hydrogen, and then we can use hydrogen to produce as energy to produce again. So there is a plan how to go further. So that first we go to electrolysis, and then it's already functional now, but that electrolysis PV technology will be used in full speed and full potential capacity, and after that, during that time, then it goes to these new systems. So that because we are not there with the new systems, artificial photosynthesis, but the plan is that we can really use solar energy completely. And when we go to the situation where the CO2 level goes below, we have to go down with CO2. So at that point, we must have more efficient photosynthesis than solar cells and hydrogen. And then when we need more efficient systems, then it will be artificial photosynthesis. So it's not, there really is a linear plan how to go to 2050. And hopefully we will not die in between, so to take care of these problems. So now the solar cells PV technology is very good, but it's not good enough to function in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so one more question. Yes, can you use the microphone? Sorry.
Yeah, just about the term we are using, the PV technology. So what does it really mean? Is it like a common solar panel, or are you referring to something else?
So
just the term.
Yeah, solar panel. Yeah, PV technologies. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, yeah. So common solar panels, but they are always improved all the time and made better and better. But they are quite good already now. Yeah. And yeah, I mean solar panels.
Like the ones that we PV photovoltaic.
Yeah.
Yes, good. So, as you know, you can also have the opportunity to ask questions after. So if there are no more questions now, I would like, first of all, to thank again Professor Eva-Mari Aro for this really extremely interesting talk. And I personally think there was a very nice combination of science and with the attempt to explain in very simple terms, and I think this was very successful, so I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I have now two more announcements. One is that we do have already a schedule for Science Café. The next one will be on February 24th. We don't know yet the speaker, but so keep following us on Facebook. Soon there will be a complete program. And the second one is I would like to advertise, it's already on our Facebook page, this very interesting event, the Open Day of the Department of Future Technologies that will be on February 7th. There are a lot of interesting topics related, for example, to robotics and humans. And maybe if you want to know more, you can also, Laszlo, you can raise your hand. You can also ask Laszlo about this event. I encourage everyone to attend a fantastic full day and fantastic panel. And you find more information on our Facebook page. So thank you again, and bye, see you next time.
Thank you.
No, it's okay. It was so nice. I really enjoyed it.
How do I close this? I turned it in every